Now, welcome back. As South Africa's 2021 local government elections leave political parties scrapping for coalition partners, it has also become clear that voters hold the power to change the country's political landscape. Now, IEC results show that the highest number of hung municipalities in the country has been had since 1994, which of course sets the stage for coalitions. And ANC Treasurer-General Paul Mashatile said that coalitions are messy, but as South Africa's new reality, it's something that the party will have to tread carefully in choosing who it will work with. Now, the ANC's inefficiencies in government, the collapse of public service delivery, uncontrolled corruption, are all factors that have undermined the party's authority, reducing it to 46% of voter support nationally during the latest local government elections. Professor William Gumede is an author, a columnist and associate professor at the Wits School of Governance and also the executive chairperson of Democracy Works. And he joins us now virtually to have a further discussion about these developments. Good morning, Prof. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers.
Prof, let me just get your initial reaction to the outcome of the local government elections 2021.
I think this is, overall, clearly it is the end of the liberation era, the end of the ANC's dominance. I mean, it has been coming for a long time, of course. You know, it's not overnight. 2016 already we saw the trend that the ANC is going to get under 50%. So this is the kind of trajectory. It's not unknown among liberation movements. Now, normally this is what happens after sort of 3 decades of in power. If a liberation movement in government is not accountable, doesn't deliver, is systemically corrupt, we do see when the second generation begin to vote, that the party initially at a local government election drop, and then in the subsequent national election, and then new parties come also as a new generation of voters mature and begin to vote for different parties.
So to that point, Prof, did you actually foresee the ANC dropping support to below 50% in these elections?
Oh, yes. I have written about it. I've spoken about it. And of course, because the ANC is so dominant, I mean, for many of us, including myself, I mean, the ANC has been very dominant in our life. So for people, you cannot imagine that the ANC cannot be there. I mean, remember just a week before the local government elections, former President Mbeki said the ANC is too big to fail. Now, of course, that is not true, because once people begin to argue that a party is too big to fail, then, of course, they'll never change the party. They won't be accountable, and then actually when the party will fail.
So coalition and coalition talks is what it's moved to now, because those councils have to be formed. They have to elect speakers, mayors, and it's going to be interesting. But also we see some of the parties who actually did well to garner a sizable portion of the vote, I should say. They actually have already come out to state that they will not be going into coalition talks with the ANC. What's your view on that, Prof? Parties like the DA, like Action SA?
I mean, maybe the first thing just to say that, the country is diverse as our country, the world's most diverse society. Coalitions is very much more appropriate. Dominant parties, it's very difficult to run when you're a dominant party, a country like our country, unless you are very inclusive of all ethnic groups, all regions, and you're not corrupt and you're very responsive. So that is why in most cases, dominant parties do dominate for a while, and then thereafter they totally collapse if they don't become accountable. Now, from a coalition point of view in our country, the second thing is also a lot of people do say, look, coalitions in South Africa has been unstable. That is not necessarily the case, although there has been some spectacular failures, of course, after 2016. We think of Botswana, we think of Nelson Mandela Bay, we think of Johannesburg. But in the main, you know, in some of the smaller towns in the Western Cape, in KwaZulu-Natal, Ekurhuleni, close by, you know, coalitions have actually worked. Now, the thing is about coalitions, and coming to your question now, is that, you know, the voters actually, when they voted, they delivered coalitions. So parties cannot say before the time that they don't want to go in coalition with one or the other party. You know, rather what they should do, it's much better to say, to go back to their voters and say, look, you know, this is the outcome. What do you think as voters as we enter a coalition? I think that should be approached, because otherwise it's going to be very limiting. Because in some instances, when a party says, well, we're not going to go into a coalition, then that may cause stability in the town or municipality.
Now, Prof, also with regard to the coalition negotiations, when these negotiations are struck, basically it happens at the highest level of the party. And how does that actually filter down to the coalface? Because you may have the leaders of the parties deciding on a particular coalition and a coalition partner, but finding that on the ground, at the coalface, people find it difficult to work with one another. So how should they ideally, as parties, approach these coalition discussions?
You know, the important thing is, you know, learning the lessons from the 2016 coalitions. What happened there in places like Johannesburg and Zwane and Nelson Mandela Bay is that coalitions were formed in many cases either in opposition to the ANC. Now, that's already a problem and is, you know, the beginning of instability. So what needs to happen, as one learned the lesson from 2016, is that coalitions, you know, the partners will have to work on a set of principles, agree on a set of principles, you know, minimum principles. Then the second thing, what they need to do is actually to put those principles in writing and make it a legal document. Then the third thing that they need to do, they have to find some kind of conflict resolution mechanism before the time. So when a conflict comes, you know, they have a way of resolving the conflict, whether they have somebody on standby who's an independent ombudsman, and so on. And then, of course, fortunately, there has to be a responsibility. I mean, the voters have delivered the outcome. Every political party wants to deliver to the voters, no matter what their ideology is. So there has to be some kind of a grown-upness, a kind of maturity and responsibility to get into a coalitions, you know, in a responsible way. Now, normally also it makes sense that normally a dual type of negotiation should happen in a party. Of course, you know, the national leadership of the party should have a broad say, but really at a local level, you know, as the people are going to work with each other, where the details have to be worked out. But a national leadership will have to take responsibility at the end of the day, political responsibility of the coalition if things goes awry.
So, Prof, this election has provided many firsts. I mean, we've got a record number of hung councils. We've seen in certain municipalities in previous ANC stronghold provinces like Mpumalanga, where the ANC has dipped to below 50%, and for the first time since the dawn of democracy have not had majorities in those councils. They will not have. And then there's, of course, Kanaland municipality. And this one is a very interesting one because although it's a very small municipality, it is a municipality where ICOSA actually garnered the majority of the votes, 45%. The ANC for the 21.5% and the DA 20.5%. And then there's another little party that also got one seat. So essentially in this municipality, you could see a municipality that is run by none of the so-called, the traditional big parties, because if ICOSA goes with the other independent party, then you shut out the ANC and the DA. But what would that mean for that municipality? Will they be able to basically get what they need in order to deliver services, given that they will basically be on the outside, as it were?
I mean, for me, also one of the exciting things about this election, it has brought a whole lot of new players at the local level. You know, and for the first time in our history, we are seeing community-based groups and political parties at a local level. And we're also seeing independent candidates. All of them have brought a new energy and, sort of fresh ways of looking at things, fresh ways possibly of governing. Many of them have never, ever been in politics. So they're not jaded and all sort of recycled people and so on. So that really brings an energy. Even if we had a very low turnout, I think even those who stayed at home will be energized by what has happened. So it's a pity, of course, we had COVID. So many of these new players, new entrants, we couldn't really see them for extended periods, or local communities couldn't see them for extended period campaigning because of the COVID restrictions. But nevertheless, that's the exciting part. On the Kanaland side, yes, I don't think it will be a problem if outsiders are now in control of the municipality. Of course, what we need to do is there has to be a maturity between the provincial sphere and the local sphere, because in the past, even in cases where the ANC was controls the municipality and they also control the province, there often have been in the past, some tensions because of that. Because unfortunately, the view has been in the ANC that local politics is really not that serious. Local politics is where the sort of junior politicians in the ANC are involved. The real politics happens at national level. So even, although we've got 3 spheres according to the Constitution, when the ANC was dominant, they actually didn't really take the local sphere seriously. So there is going to be a bit of a problem for those new entrants who are not part of the party political system. That same culture may continue, that the provincial governments and even national government may not take this seriously. But I think in reality, there's a lot of room for maneuver. The way our budgets are allocated to local municipalities and metros, it is done by law. And then there is also local income. So there's a lot of space at a local level to come up with innovative ideas, to deliver services, even perhaps if there's a provincial level, another political party, or maybe not so much enthusiasm to support a local municipality that is not run by any political party.
And Prof, we literally have a minute left, but in that minute, given what has happened, given, as you say, the electorate has spoken and they have delivered these coalition councils, why is it then difficult for the political parties and the politicians to come together in order to just deliver? Why isn't it a simple, straightforward process of, okay, we've been elected, those of us who are here, who formed this council, and all we need to do is simply deliver services to the people? Because we know that ideologically they are diverse and there will be divergent views. So why can't it be as simple as knuckle down and deliver the services?
I think, in the past, the thing is about with the dominant party, and I spoke about it before, when voters vote according to loyalty, like it was, countries like our country was polarized in the past, when people have a loyalty to a party. So then they don't vote for service delivery. They vote based on loyalty. So even if the party doesn't do well. Now, the thing about loyalty voting, it doesn't bring accountability and it doesn't bring service delivery. Now, we are now entering for the first time in South Africa, into a voting where people are beginning to vote now for service delivery, a little bit less on loyalty. Of course, a lot of people are still voting on loyalty. And I think now, once there is competition, once people fear that they may be out in the next election, now there is when people begin to buckle down. If there's no fear to be out, if you don't deliver and if you corrupt and so on, I'm afraid to say you're not going to buckle down. There is going to be then a culture of impunity. It is not only in South Africa. I mean, the 2004, World Bank report also explained in many other countries where there's been a case. So loyalty voting brings anti-delivery. A government brings lack of opportunity. It's a moment when people see that they may be voted out and that the voters are much more conscious of how they're voting. That is actually the moment that we get delivery. So I think this is the beginning of South Africa's really when we're beginning to see real delivery coming.
Professor, thanks so much for your time this morning. And that was Professor William Gumede, author, columnist and associate professor at the Wits School of Governance, discussing possible political trends in South Africa post the 2021 local government elections. And of course,